Hello, everybody, and welcome to number 6 in the series of Dialogues Around Death and the Three Principles. My name is Gillian Fox from gillianfox.com, and with me today I'm delighted to have Steve Adair. Steve is a very experienced trainer, coach, and mentor with I think over 24 years under his belt in that coaching profession, and he's also a qualified psycho-therapeutic counsellor, and I managed to say that without stumbling on that one because I was asking you about it earlier and having difficulty getting the words out. And Steve has joined us today, and he's going to be talking about the loss of 3 people that were close to him that happened in quite rapid succession, from what I understand, Steve, and how his experience of those losses actually turned into a very profound and graceful experience. And we were talking before we came on air that, a few years ago, he wouldn't have actually been able to come along and talk about this because, as far as he was concerned, death was the 4th principle, which negated all the other 3 principles that we understand to underlie life. And so I'm really pleased that he's here, and I'd like to welcome you to the call, Steve. Hello.
Hi, Gillian. Thank you very much for giving me this experience to chat with you today. And it's so right. It's when I had that awareness this morning that, gosh, going back 2-3 years ago, there's no way I'd have entertained doing something like this. So that was quite enlightening to have that experience. So thank you.
And I'd love it, Steve, if you were to start off by just telling everybody how you found the principles and what you're currently doing.
Sure. I found the principles over 3.5 years now, and it was through my business partner, Tony Fiedler, who we run the 3 principles with Life and Soul. And with the different trainings that you said, I got to a stage in my life where I was quite full of taking in any more learning, any more studying, any more training. And when Tony had came back from, it was a weekend seminar with Jamie Smart, and he was very full, oh, this is brilliant, this is exciting, I've heard of this thing called the 3 principles. And in my thinking, when he was saying it, I was like, stop, don't want to hear. And I kind of nicely he'd say, I'm really glad that you got a great weekend, but I don't know if it's anything for me. And he kind of would talk about it in different ways, and I was more going the other way in my thinking by, I just wish he would keep quiet, I'm just not interested. So because it was something on a work-wise that we possibly could do together, that was Tony's thinking. I'd gone along to a few different trainings, and there were really great experiences, but I was just left with a lot of thought. So that was, of course, telling me even more that it wasn't for me. What I was beginning to see, though, was that at that point, within the homeless sector, Tony was a manager. And there was a particular member of staff that he was finding a little bit difficult. Wonderful energy, a little bit of a maverick, and would go and do whatever what they want, even though they were told to perhaps do things this way. And what I began to notice was that Tony was not having the same reactions, even though they had not changed, the actual member of staff. So when I would ask how the person was, yeah, they're still doing what they're doing, but you're not reacting in the same way. No, I'm not. And that really began to get me thinking, what is this about? So long story short, he asked me, did I fancy going out to Canada, which I've always wanted to do. We went out to Canada, and it was the school which was run by Elsie Spittle and Chip Chipman, and it's Sydney Banks School. And long story short, I was getting out a free jail card because I was just going to go there for one day, and if I didn't like it, then I was just going to go and explore the island. But on that first full day, it was in the morning where, still to this day, I don't know what Elsie and Chip were talking about, but there was something that Elsie had said. And when I heard it from a different place. I heard it from beyond my psychological thinking. And I felt it more, I've kind of gone to explain it like a love bomb going off inside of me. That is the only way that I just seem to get so much lighter instantly. And when I got lightness, I got up from my seat, and Tony says, where are you going? I says, I'm going to speak to Elsie. And as I'm walking there, I got to the stage, and she's kind of ready to come off, and I think I'm just going to say something like, Elsie, that was really cool what you said, But out came the words, Elsie, I haven't got a clue what you've just said, but I've just come home. And that feeling just seemed to multiply around me. Now, I hadn't up to that point watched any of the principles. I wasn't interested. I wanted to get it new if I was going to hear. I hadn't read anything. I went on the internet once to listen to Sydney Banks and lasted 2 minutes. And I think the only reason I listened is because he was Scottish and so am I. That was my way to kind of get me there. But as I turned round after Elsie saying that, I just felt this feeling ripple around everyone. And as I felt it ripple around everyone, there was just this undescribable feeling of love, where I wasn't seeing the people sat there, but I was seeing the true consciousness sat there. And I go back to my seat, and by then I'm a little bit back in personal thinking, because I know I'm going to have to explain this to Tony. And he says, what did you say to Elsie? I'm not telling you, because I really was like, what did I say to Elsie? By then we had a break and we'd gone outside, and I found myself saying to Tony, I haven't got a clue what happened there, but I'm going to share this for the rest of my life. And that I needed time to really connect to what I was really saying, because it was something that would just instantly seem to happen, but it was a feeling, for me, it was familiar from childhood. So I started resting with that, and from that we ended up deciding that we would go into working with people on a one-to-one, because I already had done my psychotherapeutic training, I already had done my NLP and my coaching and different stuff, and we decided that it would be strictly principles-based that we would work with. So from that moment, that's what we did. So for the last 3 years, we've been back to Salt Spring to do fellowship training with Chip and Elsie, and just really, the sky's been the limit since then.
Fabulous. I love what you said about you felt you'd come home, and it's kind of, that's a common thread, that when you talk to people that have heard something when somebody like Elsie is speaking,
Yeah.
that's the expression that's used, isn't it? And I know Michael Neal uses that a lot now.
Yeah.
But it's literally like that. It's, you know, my experience was that it's like somebody got hold of the golden thread that in my solar plexus and just pulled me towards it, and I just went, oh, I've been waiting for this all my life.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you had the same kind of sort of feeling about that.
Absolutely. And isn't it beautiful? Because it's something, it's so instant but yet so familiar. And for me in that moment, so then that was the advantage point that I began to look at from my life. And in that moment of saying that anything that I did create was created by me, which I was really a searcher, I was a seeker, I would be constantly looking at how could I make myself better in order for me to help the people that I was working with, which meant that, well, I've got responsibility, I need to have supervision, I need to have counseling, I was meditating, I was doing lots of things to make me better. And in that moment, I recognized that there is a perfection within me, it can never be broken or damaged. So because that perfection is within me, and I see it within everyone, then I don't have to do those things that I constantly used to do in order to have a daily routine, in order for me to be a better person. So just seeing this waking up to our true reality, our nature, and I have heard Elsie many times say that since coming home, and for me the best way to sum that up, it's like, I once said it was almost like feathering your own nest.
It's that kind of comfortable, yeah, nesting, just being a bit,
Yeah,
you know, like a
yeah,
chicken would do, like, you know, just
yeah,
hunkering down there and going, oh, I
yeah,
don't, and I love, you know, and there's nothing to fix. There's
yeah,
nothing wrong with anybody.
absolutely,
There's nowhere to
absolutely,
go. And gosh, that's such a relief, isn't it?
absolutely. And maybe the bit that you missed, Julian, was that I was saying that in that feeling of kind of nesting, there was such a protection. There is such a security, and it's a place of wisdom. And in that place, when you begin to look through the eyes of those feelings, then you begin to see your life in such a different way. There isn't the struggle of the intellect there. Wisdom knows what the intellect is, but the intellect doesn't know what wisdom is. So the intellect tries to run the show where it's really the source of what's behind that that I'm delighted that we're going to be exploring tonight, how that experience is created in the first place. That's what gets me really excited, because I know that it's not just something between you and I, it's in every single person. And for me, having this experience of what we're going to explore through the conversation, that would have been something, as what I'd say to you in our initial chat, was that this was the fourth principle to prove that, sorry, the rest don't work. A death within my family would have been something, it would have really got me into some thinking. And for a little while, I could see myself trying to go there, but I didn't. And that's the experience that I'm going to be enjoying sharing with you this evening.
Yeah, and I think it's lovely that we can just invite the people that are watching, the people that will watch it later, don't get hooked up on the words we're using. Just sit back and just listen for that feeling like you'd listen to music.
Yeah.
So tell me about the experiences you've had with the people that you've lost, and perhaps a little bit of the story around those losses.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. Um, the first experience, well, what was interesting was that when I was kind of sitting before we came on live on air, I was looking at what death meant to me through my life, and coming up for 25 years ago, the major death that I had experienced was the death suddenly of my dad, and that was something which was very traumatic in its own way, but it was something that I now recognize that I took the role of being the eldest son, of trying to emotionally and practically sort everything out. And I kind of took over the role since then as being someone that needed to be the keeper. Now, I wasn't asked to do that, but this was something that I saw traditionally, being Scottish, was that's what happened. And that's the role that I psychologically took. So last year, and it was just before we were ready to fly out to Minnesota for the conference, and we'd heard the sudden news that a dear friend of ours' husband had died suddenly. And there wasn't enough time for me to get back up, because she doesn't live locally. There wasn't enough time for me to get up to see her in order for me to get on the flight. And when I'd got there, so I made contact the best that I could, but this particular morning that I woke up feeling as if I had so much thinking going on during my sleep. And we'd gone down from the hotel room to have something to eat. And I was aware of just feeling really, I can't shake this kind of tiredness off. So I'd excused myself. I says to Tony and our colleague Janet, I'm just going to take some time out. And in between getting up to the hotel room, I started thinking of my friend. But the kind of thinking went along the lines as in, or poor Margaret, what state is she going to be in? All of a sudden, this happening to her. What's the children going to be like? What's the grandchildren going to be like? Everything. I was telling myself that how horrible it must be for her, and what life would be like. And really, the more floors I went up, the lower my consciousness went down. And I went back into the bed, and I lay on top of the bed and could feel even more so that, oh, I just wish I could go up and see her. And then I just had this moment where it's like I saw what I was doing to myself. And what I saw was that, wait a minute, how do you know right now what's going on for your friend? Sure, her husband's just passed and she's going to be sad, but how do you know in that moment where she's at? She could be playing with her grandchildren, she could be having coffee with a girlfriend, she could be with one of the children. But in my experience, I was really feeling sad, anxious. And what I recognized was that in that moment then, the reason why I started off sharing about my dad was that that was the only blueprint, the template that my experience was made of. So, of course, I would reinvent what already had happened before as being that must be happening again. This is what it's like. This is how you react. This is what you do. And of course, because I couldn't be there to make it right or to sit with her, to make her coffee or whatever, I made up all this story of what it was like, how horrible it must be. And once I saw that, my mood just lifted completely when I saw I've made all that up. I also was doing a breakout session with George Pransky that day, and I was even like living in the state of mind of, you're going to be useless, you're going to be rubbish. And when I woke up to, wait a minute, look what you're creating, I thought, that talk is 6 hours away. Why am I living in fear of what's going to happen 6 hours away when it's not happening right now? And again, the more I saw that, the more lighter I became. And in that moment, what I recognized was that I could send her love, I could send her a prayer, whatever I wanted to. I could pick her up and pick up the phone and call her if I wanted to, apart from it would have been the middle of the night. But my mood just changed. And I became so much lighter, and I just went straight back downstairs. And Tony and Janet was like, thought you were taking some time out. Oh, I don't need that. And that really allowed me to see each moment how it is me creating the experience. And even though I had knew that, I saw it from a different place, that I created that experience of making up how other people were and how I needed to be surrounding that experience. And it was the innocence of, because of that's what happened previously, that must be what's happening now. And because I couldn't fulfill what I thought was dutiful of me, I turned it back on myself. Now, seeing innocently how I did that just changed my whole perception of how I react. And that was something, so fortunately enough, we got enough time to be back for the funeral, and then I could fulfill whatever role I felt that I wanted to at that time. But what I did recognize, and this is what was very different, was that I realized that what kind of happened in that experience of poor my friend, poor this, poor that, it's like I was numbing myself with my thinking and put myself to sleep, almost into the experience. And all that was serving me was falling more deeper into despair or anxiousness. And I kind of see it as if I was switching myself off, numbing myself. And perhaps at one point that might have been for protection, but I didn't see that it was fulfilling me in any way. And the bigger picture, it didn't fulfill my experience. Apart from get me worried, was I going to be able to talk later on? Was I going to be able to have a good day later on? And once I saw that, the switch was the waking up. I woke up to, oh my goodness, look what I've just created. Look what I've just done, innocently, thinking that's the only thing that I can do. And I really saw that what was in play there was the moment-to-moment reality that the principles begin to guide us to. Because that's where we're coming from. Life experiences do not happen to us. We experience them through our own senses, through our own interpretation, and through our own psychological understanding. But because that's only based on the past, it doesn't mean that it's factual. It just means that it's something that we're listening to habitually. And again, the more I saw that, it was like, oh my God, I just love this. And you know what the greatest gift for it was, Gillian, was that I woke myself up. And all my times of searching, like what I did before, I would go and I'd meditate to get myself out of the state that I was in. I'd maybe go and speak to someone. I would have to do something. And literally within, 5-10 minutes of going up on the lift and lying on the bed, wow, I just woke up clearly to not just how I create my experience, but how we all create psychological experience moment to moment. So I went on and had a beautiful talk with George. I had a beautiful afternoon and had a fantastic evening.
Hmm. just went, it switched like that, didn't it, when you
It
saw it?
did, and
Yeah.
that was the unbelievable thing that it did. It's like it just kind of changed from pour this, pour that to openness, where I just saw it for what it was. I just saw that innocently creating the experience was giving me, like, what you think is what you become. And I had become my old thinking. And just seeing it for the innocence, it was like, oh my goodness. It wasn't, oh, how could I do that to myself? This is terrible that you do that. It was just like, oh my God, that's incredible. So it immediately changed my whole mindset from a place of despair to a place of hope, because I saw that how the change does happen when we hear from inside, when we realize that we're not our past experiences, that we are how we are showing up in that moment, full stop. And in that moment, if I wanted to stay sadness and feeling sorry for my friend, it's not that I see it anymore as being, well, that's bad to be in that place, but it's just that if I choose the experience, that would be my choice. The experience doesn't have to have me. And I have that choice in that moment of whether I go with habitual thinking or whether I don't. And I see that available to every single person, moment to moment. We have the clarity, the protection that we were talking future in the moment and what we're experiencing. And what I've recognized more so from it was maybe about 2 months after, where there was a younger cousin of mine who died suddenly in South Africa. And it was late at night when we got the call. And I don't know about your household, but anything after 9 o'clock, if the phone goes, it's like, who's that? The phone doesn't normally go, unless we've arranged to speak to someone, of course, after that time. So I picked up the phone, and it was my mum, and she gave me the news about my younger cousin. And she says to me, I can't even cry. She says, I'm so shocked. So we explored that a little bit. And then I came off, and we had just had a good friend come over from Ireland. And I knew the next day that Tony and I were going to have quite a big business meeting with the homeless sector in Brighton. And we really needed to be for that meeting. And plus, we'd say to our friend Keith that we would show him around town, around the city. So I spoke to them what my mum had just said about my cousin, went to sleep, woke up a few times, and I remember my thinking going, oh, I wasn't just dreaming, that was real. And then I think it was about 6 o'clock I woke up, which can be a normal time for me. But the immediate realization of, oh my goodness, I woke up a few times, but I slept. Now, my old habitual thinking would have had me stuck in, oh my goodness, my mum's in the house on her own. She's going to be like what it was like when she heard my dad had passed. I need to get up there and be with her. And even though it was 10 o'clock at night and it'd have took me 2.5 hours to drive there, I would have done it. But because I knew I had the meeting the next day, I couldn't. I knew I had to stay and be part of that. I was kind of excitably shocked that I had actually slept, knowing that how my mindset would have been before. The worry wart, the having to sort it out, the making stories up of how horrible it must be for everyone. And even though there's a realization of that experience, don't get me wrong, it wasn't a good experience. And there was a sadness that I very much felt, because for my aunt, my uncle, and my cousins, and his own family, and his wife, and there was lots of different kind of feelings went on. But we went along and we had the meeting, and it was a very successful meeting. And what again it showed me was that how comes I could be in a state of trauma but still carry on okay? How can I go and talk about the three principles in motion and in that moment be okay, even though I had the sadness of my cousin? And that really started switching me on again, like the way it was from my experience of my friend. It was like, oh my goodness, so you could still be in a state of non-well-being and still carry on with life. Oh, that was new. Seeing it from the advantage point that I was in was new. So we had gone along and we were having a great day taking our friend round Brighton, and we went to have something to eat. And in that moment, it just hit me again. It was like a wave of sadness.
And I had the choice then of recognizing that, I don't again have to become this sadness. It is sad. I was frustrated because, again, my family being in South Africa, I couldn't be with them. But I was aware that I was making up this story of how they would be feeling and reacting. My bet was, which is common, that there is shock, frustration, a little bit of anger. But again, it was things that I was making up that they perhaps would have been feeling at that time. And when I saw that that's what I do, because that's what I've always done, I stopped doing it. It was as simple as that. I stopped tying myself up psychologically in the way that I used to before. And I saw that actually this space of not physically being in the same country, there's been a gift in that, because I would have gone to my family immediately. I'd have gone and collected my mum and gone to my family and been there. But I couldn't. So I had to be kind of left with my own thinking. And that gave me space.
I think we've got a frozen Steve again. Just check broadband width. Oh, yes. Yeah, looks like Steve's just dropped off the call for a moment. Was he having some more technical hitches? Ah, and he's back again.
I'm back again. I've recognized so it cut me off again, but I recognize where to go this time. So I don't know what part I got up to there.
You were talking about the physical space, that
Yeah.
you weren't able to do what, habit would have said you go, you rush to get there.
Right.
And that how that gave you the insight of
Yeah.
what you were doing.
Yeah. What it gave me, actually, surprisingly to say this word, Gillian, it gifted me with space. It gave me the opportunity to be there for myself like never before. And I recognized that what I was doing in my making it all right for everybody else, I put me second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, way back down the line. So then I would, maybe months down the line, go on a little bit of burnout, or it would kind of hit me then. But having this fresh insight into being there for myself from the get-go in a way that I'd never been before, in such a beautiful way, it allowed me actually to be there for my family more easily, because I was fully present. I wasn't asleep when I was helping them. I was fully aware of where my consciousness was. I was fully aware of my moments of dipping into being a little bit frustrated that I couldn't get over there, to as in, well, that's natural. You would want to get over there. It's your family. It's the type of person you are, rather than being, oh my God, I can't get over there. I could just see it for, well, it's okay to have those up and down feelings. You just don't have to become them.
Mm.
And that was a gift that I saw again, not to judge any thinking that I have, to give myself the grace of the space to see how I show up is up to me. And if I want to be a little bit frustrated, it's me, it's creating it, so I can non-create it. And what I got to see was that, well, that's really not me anyway. So why would I live in a state of non-well-being and create something that it doesn't resonate with me just because an experience had happened? And that if I'm really worried how my cousins are, speak to them. Talk to them. So before, I may have been stuck in the I have to do, and just seeing that there was a misunderstanding going on. I misunderstood how to be in any situation when it comes to death. I misunderstood innocently by thinking, because it happened, again, this is how it needs to be. And when I saw that it was my misunderstanding, it was such a relief to see that I could just be me, that nothing was expected of me. And that really gave me the grace. And by the grace of technology and being able to be in conversation with my other cousins, it allowed me to be, again, is what I say, is there for myself more, and hear where they were coming from, and recognizing where they were at was okay, because they were just having the same psychological experience as what I was. And innocently, they were reacting in the way that they were reacting. And that was still okay, because there isn't a written book, I believe, when it comes to that kind of shock. And it's the type of thing when we think of death, I can only go by how I was brought up, but it was such an embracing timing away, that where you would go to the family and you would take, we call them messages, but you would go and get shopping, and that might be tea bags and cakes and food, and you would make big pots of everything, because people who were coming to pay their condolences would always get fed, they would always get, so that was missing. I didn't have that excuse me, a little bit of a ritual, if you like, that I was used to. And what I did recognize, though, was that thank goodness that my family had one another in South Africa. Thank goodness that the same love that I was brought up in, they have within their hearts, and they will deal with things the best they know how. And you know, that's good enough for me, that as long as I know that they can deal with things the best that they can, they'll be okay. And that opened me up to another level of understanding, where I wasn't missing the lesson, I was just embracing the experience of the lesson. And the more that I recognized that when my other cousin, who I can't even remember, I think it's maybe not even, maybe 2 months since his passing, might even be shorter, but the really thing again which had happened being in Scotland was, and we were aware of my cousin taking ill, so we had a little bit of pre-warning that there was the brain tumours, and with that comes the hope, though, that who knows. So being in that state of who knows, anything could happen, to being told that it was terminal, was very much, it went to a different kind of thinking, because it was more like, all I ask is that he doesn't suffer. And so when we had heard that his passing had happened, there was a double kind of thinking going on. There was the sadness, but the relief that he wasn't in pain. And that was, I believe, through having those experiences before, allowed me to see it for what it was that this was still a young life. He was 4 years older than me. My cousin who had passed before was 2 years younger, 3 years younger than me. And it was the reality of, oh my God, this is people in my generation. That was what was freaking me out. When it was older people, you can kind of think, well, they've had a good life. Doesn't make it any easier. But this was people in my generation. This isn't supposed to happen. That was where my thinking was going. But was this happening with my cousin who recently had passed? What I was aware that, particularly with his sister, I could be there the best that I could. I could hold her in a space of just letting her be where she was. And what that allowed me to be is be aware of me. So when maybe the conversations that we had afterwards, that I would be a little bit like, oh God, love her, rather than, oh my God, it's a shame what she's going through. I could actually see that, you know, there is no right or wrong of reacting when we have a sudden death or a passing. That's made up how we should react. So if I, in this moment, even though I feel shocked again and sad, I have the grace of knowing that there will be moments of sadness, but I don't have to let it consume me. And the interesting thing is that we went out to Salt Spring Island this year, and the day of the funeral was the day that we flew out. So once again, I was given space. I couldn't be at the funeral. And I kind of jokingly was like, oh my God, Craig, couldn't you have sorted this out? And that was my cousin. And what I recognized was that it was the ritual that I was missing. It was the opportunity to be there with my family. It was the opportunity to give him a good send-off. I was really getting locked into that a little bit. And when I saw it, it shifted again. Because I knew that my family who were there would have given him a good send-off. And I knew that I could send a thought. So I'd say to my cousin, you know, I'm going to be sending my thoughts and prayers up in the clouds because I'm going to be much nearer him than any of you.
Lovely.
And it was like, oh my God, I can actually have, and it wasn't that I was joking, but it was like, I saw a little bit of the cosmic humor in that. Because I knew that if he would have seen me upset, he'd have said, oh, get a grip. Oh, you don't want to be down. And I knew that he wouldn't have wanted that. And I saw it. Rather than hearing him tell me it, I just saw it, that that's not what he was about. He was such a gentle, caring, loving soul that he'd have just wanted everybody to be okay. And seeing it that from, oh my goodness, there really is a gift in that, of seeing that moment to moment, knowing that all my experiences come untainted, there's no stressful thinking in there. There is that feeling of comfort, of protection, of security, of wisdom. And knowing that that's what's flowing through me every moment. When I'm at home in that place, I know all is well. When I look at what's happening outside, I know that some things aren't well for some people, but I know behind all their experience, it's the same wellness as me. And I know that they will get through it. And I know that I'm in a much richer place to be there for them in whatever way. And that I don't have to be there for them. And that's took the pressure off of me. That I just see that if there is no stressful thought coming from mind, consciousness, and thought, then where does my stress come from? If I look at it as being the experience of, you know, my friend's husband had passed, that's what created my stress, then how could it change just like that? Who is the creator of the experience there? And where is it being created from? And my feeling of being at home with the principle of mind, when I started off at the beginning talking about that feeling of just seeing everyone connected, I knew that in that place, those three people that I've talked about, and even my dad, that there could never be a separation. Because in the formless intelligence of life, that's where we feel the love that nurtures every single intelligence in the universe. I sit as I look out the office window and see the trees in full bloom. I know when it comes in a few months' time, they'll lose their leaves. But that doesn't go into bereavement. It goes into the normal cycle of life. And I saw that that's okay. Everything that we do is simply okay. I was sitting watching, it was when the tennis Wimbledon was on, and I always remember my cousin Craig, when Andy Murray, the year that he actually won, and on Facebook it would come up, because he was never a man of many words on Facebook, and he was always straight to the point kind of man, and a gentle way, but very forceful and straight to the point at the same time. And all he would say was, oh, you can never hurry Murray. Murray meant you can never. And so I would giggle and have this little thought. This was last year. Now, of course, this year watching Murray, and I'd gone on for something, and it came into my head, oh, I'm not going to hear him say that this year. I'm never going to hear Craig say Murray meant. Now, he typed it. I heard it. I made up the story. And I got a little bit sad, and it was like, oh God, it's moments like this that you recognize that he's in the formlessness of life, that he, to us, is gone, but in the formlessness of life, he's not. And the pure essence of love, intelligence, God, whatever we call it, he's not. So when I choose to think of him and my other cousin and my friends and my dad and the other family members and friends who've passed, I can get stuck in the experience of it. Or I could be with the experience of it, just aware of my rising and falling of consciousness and being aware that my human experience is all okay. At times, if I feel sad, it is sad that I'm not going to hear him say it, but it doesn't mean that I have to live in sadness. And that giving me the space to breathe, the space to recognize that my pure nature is love. Your pure nature is love. Everyone's pure nature is love. Everything and the intelligence of life is love, which means that when we drop behind our psychological experiences, we're in love with ourselves, with the world, with everything around us. I know when I look through those eyes out into my world, it doesn't know of fear, because fear is something that we've made up as human beings. It's something that the ego believes that it has a right to have. And you know, at birth, the only fear that we had was of falling, because we were suspended within the womb. Then, of course, all of a sudden we came out, whatever way where we came out, and it was like that sudden thrust. So that's something inbuilt that we have. So that's how, you know, sometimes when you're lying maybe on the sofa or on bed, you jaw, it's as if you're falling. That's just that kind of little bit of remembrance. Everything else apart from that, we've made up through stories. We've made up through experiences that we've had in the past. So what I was aware when I had those experiences, I wasn't just thinking of my poor friend, my two cousins and my uncles and my aunt. I was thinking of all the other times it happened. All in the one shot, because that's how our unconscious mind is so clever. It's almost like when we're talking through computers, and it stores it like a computer. So as soon as we key in the word bereavement or shock, oh, I know what that's like. Here you go, full force. And our feelings are so believable that we believe we're locked into the feeling. But when we recognize that, well, if we create that experience, then I am the thinker, which means that I'm choosing to think of that experience instead of seeing it the illusion of the past. Instead of seeing it that it's not who I am in this moment, because that experience of my dad, my friend's husband, and my two cousins were all separate occasions. So if they were all separate occasions, happening to different family members and different friends, why am I thinking the same old way about it? Because that's all I knew. And the more that I see that, that's where we innocently get lost by thinking that the limitations that we put on ourselves from the past is all we've got. But when we see that, if we believe our thinking, that's true. But if we see that we are not our thinking when we're in lower states of consciousness, and we're not to take it seriously, then there was a couple of nights that I saw, and I felt pretty bummed out, because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to go up to Scotland to be with my family. I knew that I was going to an exciting place to be in Salt Spring Island. And it was you know, that the devil and the angel on your shoulder, one was saying, oh, it's terrible. The other one was like, but it's all okay. And it was like, oh my goodness, I know which one I can believe. It isn't nice that I'm going to miss. But at the same time, I had my other cousins' blessings. They understood. And that's what before, in all my confusion, I might not have thought about. I touched base with them to make sure that they were okay with me not being there. And that kind of allowed me to just breathe a little bit more into the experience. And the exact same time of us flying out from Gatwick, the funeral was happening in Scotland. And that was a very weird but beautiful experience of just knowing that, because before I'd have been, oh, this will be happening now, that will be happening now. It was like, okay, I just send them love. I know when I drop away from this thinking, we all meet in love. And I sent so much love to my family and my cousins who had passed, that I sat there with a contentment that I didn't know was available to me in those moments. And that, when I say brought a tear to my eye, it wasn't a tear of sadness at all. It was a tear of simple realization of how really, as human beings, amazing we are, and how this natural desire to help one another is beautiful, and how our innocence, we get lost in that being there for one another, and that's all. And that overwhelmed me, but just how incredible we really are, every single one of us, that no matter what's going on in life, we can be there like a drop of a hat, giving our very last. And it allowed me to think, I may have pushed myself way down the pecking order, but I don't regret that. But I know that even if I put myself down the pecking order, I'm still there for myself. We can still be readily available for ourselves in whatever way. So I saw through the eyes of the principles that when something happened, which originally we talked about it being, sorry, this is the fourth principle, sorry, the other three don't work. I saw that that's when they truly are in flow. Because as you know, Jolene, it's not that you have to learn the principles. From the moment we came on this earth, we've been the principles in action. There has not been a moment in our world where we've not been the principles in action. So recognizing that through all the experiences, I may have been using them more against me by believing my psychological experiences, through seeing that's what I innocently done, it was like, wow, I even got through those experiences when I wasn't believing that life is happening to me and I wasn't flowing with life. What is life like when we're flowing, being at one with this essence of love inside every single one of us? What is it like to be aware that no matter what goes on for any members of my family, the members of the consciousness going up and down, that underneath that they're all okay? That same love will get them through it. And if they don't, I hope that it reaches out, that they get the support in whatever way they needed. But I know at that same time, because I'm very good at sensing, and it might just be the odd time that I just drop a few lines through email. But I also know at the time when it's time to visit. And that's where I can trust. This is a new way of knowing that all along I've had this sense of when to move into action properly and when not to. That's something to be honored within me, which I didn't see before. So the switch around is that it allows us to see the rising and the falling, just like the waves of the ocean. It doesn't say, oh, you shouldn't have slapped across the ocean that way. It does ebb and flow as it's made to be.
That was so beautiful that I'm reluctant to step into the space and say something, just that it seems that we've lost connection with Steve again, but I'm just feeling so deeply what he's been talking about that I actually don't want to actually fill this space with any words. So I know Steve is just going to connect back to us. So I think while we wait for him, let's just be in the space of the words, those beautiful words that he's been sharing with us, and the beautiful feeling that came from what he's been saying.
Back again.
Steve, we were just enjoying the beautiful space that you've created.
Good.
And no words were really needed, just being with that lovely feeling.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's that simple recognition, Jillian, that for me, when we're really talking about the true nature of the principles, it's the feeling it does the work. It's not the words that we're actually saying. It's that feeling that we share. It's such a core, primordial level. It does the work. And knowing that when we get out of our way and let it do its job, it can move things way beyond any intellectual understanding, quicker, faster, in a clearer way than we could have imagined possible. Just like I explored with my friend, a matter of 10-15 minutes and I was going back down that lift again. I would have bet you that would have took me down for months feeling sorry, based on my old past. So I know that when we rest in that essence of mind, that it has our back. It knows us better than we will ever know ourselves, because it's truly who we are. It's not who we've made up. It doesn't have an agenda. The only purpose, if we bring a purpose to it, is for our highest good and benefit. Is for us to be of service. It to be of service to us. To work in unity. To make our life and those around us, by waking them up. How I saw in the psychological experience that I numbed myself. And I see that simply that's what we all do, whether it's through death or whether it's through a divorce or whether it's through relationships or through our job or just because. We're constantly taking ourselves in and out of sleep. We're falling asleep by numbing ourselves, then we're waking up to the experience. But we're not understanding truly where it's coming from. And what I love about what you're doing here, Jillian, is giving people the opportunity through your conversations to see how other people are waking up, and that is readily available to them, just the same as it is to us. And my sharing is in the hope that people really feel that from within themselves. It's not because of what I'm saying. Now, you felt that feeling, and what I love about that is we're joining where we truly belong. And that doesn't, we could just sit here and say nothing. And that feeling would just guide us from home, because that's what I recognized. I don't have to worry about getting home. We are home. We never left. We are still the same spiritual intelligence when we came to Earth. We fell asleep by getting lost in our psychological experience. And through the gift of the three principles as uncovered by Sydney Banks, it simply shows us the illusion of life, the illusionary nature of getting lost in our thinking. And seeing that when we wake up to the same wisdom that governs nature, who will drop those leaves, who will allow it to grow again, who knows how to work the ecosystem, who knows how to, right now our hearts are beating, right now our internal organs are doing. When you look at how life is created in the first place, that's a miracle. That every single one of us who sit here talking and listening through your conversations, the fact that we're here in the first place, that's a miracle. And I know that that miracle does not stop when this physical life finishes. The same love it brought us here and has always been within us, we go back to it fully. I know that within my core. I felt that when I said that I've come home. And the really interesting thing is that when people say to me about speaking about the principles, just when I think I know what they are, I learn something. It's like, okay, so I now know what I think they are now. And now I kind of tend to say, I don't know what they are, but I know what that feeling of love is. I know what that feeling of hope is. I know what that feeling of, oh my goodness, that's incredible, you've just done that. I know what that feeling of people waking up to their true nature is. And that's where I look towards now. More to the well-being, the innate health and well-being inside of us. More to a part that because it's not broken, it doesn't need me to fix it. It needs simply for me to hold the space the way you and I are talking now. I know that through the surety of who we truly are, people wake up to that themselves. Because if we look at the old way of how death or grief is, there's a cycle that we actually go through. That's not true of everyone. Granted, there may be the ups and downs of the chart of, like, some people for the first 3 months, you could have shock, you may have fear, you may have anxiousness, you may have anger. Then I've known some people who have been so relieved that their loved ones are no longer in pain. Where I've known some people who have gone through that graph of what grief should be like. And I see it in that it's all okay. Because I see that a year down the line, they're not in that place where they were when it first happened. So the same wisdom it governs has governed them, and the way it's been right for them. And the joy of knowing that I don't have to say, well, you'll probably feel that way for a few months. That's what I would have told myself. But lying on that bed, it changed. So I can't say that to anyone, that your grief will be this way, or you should react this way, you should do that way. I just want to nurture and knowing that that same intelligence of love is inside of them. And when they're ready to truly hear that and wake up, I hope I'm there to hear it. Because I know how beautiful their life will be when they see how they're showing up. And that's the gifts I love. When you've called it a dialogue, I love that word that you've used, because to me it's a sharing. A dialogue is a sharing of the heart. And when we share from the heart, we see that it's all okay to be where we're at. And I cannot say that enough. To tell each other, oh, you'll get better, it'll be okay, it'll soon move. How do we know that? How do we know when it will be? We know eventually it will be, but how do we know when it will be for them? But through the simple sitting and just resting, and knowing that they have a profound wonderment inside of them that is looking after them perfectly well. Talk to the health. Talk to that part. Be with that part. Don't jump into their psychological fear or terrors, because you'll just compound it for them. They'll feel that on that level. Just be sure of who you are, and knowing that you can still listen to them, whether it takes 1 month, a year, 2 years. It's not up to us to decide. But I know when we give that same space that what I've been saying that I was granted, it gives the space for things to come fresh, for an understanding to occur from them to them. And that's the simplicity for me of the principles, that we see the simplicity of life, the neutrality of life. We see how we're making it all up. But it's all okay as long as we don't believe it. And when we do believe it, it's still okay, because when we see it, it just changes. And that's the gift that I look at through life now. And I want to chuckle when I hear myself still saying, knowing that I'm talking a conversation surrounding death, that I talk about a gift. I knew there was the gift of my dad passing suddenly and that he wouldn't be in pain, but I didn't see the gift in it from me. I didn't see the gift in it from my mum. I didn't see the gift in it from my brother. And perhaps it's not up to me to decide what their gift is. The only person I know the gift for is me, because the only experience that I truly know about is me. And when we look at through life, that's all we'll ever know. We only make up how we believe other people are thinking and feeling. But when we truly know that this is where I'm at, and I'm not feeling tickety-boo right now. Oh, okay, so I'm not tickety-boo. And it allows a space to be created that if whatever environment I'm in, if it, I might, unless obviously we went to a business meeting, it would be different, but if it's around friends or colleagues, then I can say, I'm a little bit stuck right now. So just be aware. If I'm not myself, that's why. It's nothing you've done. And just giving me that space just to be doesn't mean I become it. It means that I'm not looking at it, rather than being, oh my God, I just snapped there. Oh, that's because I'm feeling upset because it just allows me to be in that space. And I notice that it just changes much quicker without me having to do anything about it. And if it didn't, I would still be okay with that, because I wouldn't invest in it. I wouldn't go to the bank and then say, Mr. Bank Manager, can you take £300 worth of sadness, please, and put it in the vault for me? And don't let it out until I give you the special. We wouldn't do that. So why would we put something in that we wouldn't want to get back? And that's how I see life. What we invest in is what we get back. And that's very simple. So I know that I can invest in anything, and I'll have the experience of my investment. But it's the choice that every single one of us has, the gift of choice. There's a gratitude for me in that, of, my goodness, if this is what I or we can do to ourselves when we're stuck in our thinking, how more incredible can we be when we recognize that, get out of our way, and allow our pure intelligence to flow? Life gets more simpler. I know for me, there's the need to make things right is gone. The want to make things right is gone. The desire for every single person to live in a place of love for themselves and others is at my forefront. Who they are, what they experience. Love is alive inside. And this truly is an inside-out experience. And how my cousins experience it will all be different from one another. How I experience it will be different, and it's all okay. It really is all okay. So for me, I would have argued with you. I would have gone to the bank and invested money to argue with you. It's not going to be okay, Gillian. How could you say this? But when I sit here and know that we have the pure essence of love, of mind, consciousness, and thought flowing through us every single second, and it brings freshness and aliveness, that I can show up in that moment like the way I haven't before. And if I have a thought that I don't like, I have freshness coming through. We all do. And that's what becomes exciting. It's someone, I remember someone saying it's a secret. And I see it as a secret as in, gosh, if you really knew what we were talking about, hearing it from inside yourself. But I don't know if it's a true secret, because, you know, we really do know. Because we never walk about, we've never in our world 100% been stuck in a state of anxiety. We've never been in a state of depression or gloomness. Neither have we been in a 100% state of happiness, of laughter, of joy. Our natural neutrality is to bounce in consciousness of mood up and down, up and down. Depends what levels we get stuck at if we take it serious. Saying that now is like, do you mean I have the choice? Do you mean that experience doesn't determine who I am? Oh my God. Oh, this is new. This is different.
It turns things around, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It really does. And it takes it from kind of being blinkered to, oh, all bets are off. Who knows where this could end up? Who knows? And that's true for everyone. Whatever situation is going on in life, the true answers are within us. And I know when I've got out of my way, life is shortening maybe in about now. That tells me not to get lost in time. If we get stuck in time, we're not in the moment. We're not in the power of this particular moment here. There's some changes that we are making with our work at the moment. We truly don't know where it's going. but the feeling of possibility is what we know of service will guide us.
And
there's a trust with that of the intelligence.
oops.
Where I would have said I was anxious and depressed, but I'm not now. That's true of everyone.
Mm.
And that's what, for me, becomes beautiful. The simplicity, the neutrality of life.
It's a perfect place to leave it, I think, Steve.
Yeah, I feel that too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity, Jolene, because hearing myself come from where I'm coming from, it's like a soothing balm. That's the only way to describe it, because I didn't know what I was going to say until we came on here. And I wanted to honor my experiences of that my family and friends may not be in the same place as me, and I wanted to honor that. And I really hope it's come across that I have. But I know who I've truly honored is me. And this is still a new gift in this moment. And I love it. So thank you.
Thank you. And you've honoured all of our listeners and the people that will watch this recording.
Good.
With
I hope
your
so.
beautiful sharing. Steve, before we close this, how can people contact you, get in touch with you?
There is some exciting changes, is what I was saying, coming up. I don't have the definite details, but it does involve a lot more community work, a lot more where I'm going to be start doing teaching of the principles. I do one-to-one work. I do that through Skype. I do it one-to-one in person, as well as group works, business, whatever people want, I'm there. And they can catch me at our website is www.3plivesoul.co.uk, and my email is steve@3plifesoul.co.uk. And any of the changes that we're making as far as our business and the community projects that we do, it will be signposted up there to direct to the new website that we will be creating. So that'll be exciting news when it comes out. But for the meantime, that's how people can easily get in contact with me.
That's lovely. That's lovely. And there'll be an email going out to everybody that's connected through to this hangout, and we can
Wonderful.
put those details on that as well. So
Oh, that's great.
when we're off air, I'll just take a note of those again, so I can add that to the email.
Sure.
Yeah. Steve, just thank you.
My pleasure, and thank you, Jolene.
It's been a lovely space, a lovely experience, and
Good.
even the spaces that we've had when the actual technical contact has been lost, the actual soul-to-soul contact has still been there.
Yeah,
and
that's special.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, and goodbye to everybody, and thank you for watching. Bye now.
Bye-bye.